Okay, let's get on to the demo. Today's demo is playing with paint, like I said earlier. Now, I'm going to show you a quick technique, because all techniques are quick, really. Once you know what you're doing, they're all not too bad. It's just that some techniques are probably a little bit more complicated because there's 2 or 3 steps involved, but this one, it's layers of paint. So what we need, I have pre-gessoed a piece of card just so I can demo with. We need brushes. I've got 2. I don't know whether I need 2, but I've got one that's quite thick. You know, what's that? 3/4 of an inch, maybe an inch. So quite thick. And I've got a thinner one just in case. It's always handy to have extra. You need baby wipes. Oh, upside down baby, not a good thing. And paints. So white paint. You could use gesso if you wanted. It doesn't really matter. And you might not even use the white paint. It's only there in case you want to change the tone of the other colours. Umber. This is how the Dina Wagley paints used to come out before they changed them over into this format. And I've got some umber left in this one, I hope. So I'm going to use umber. Umber's, it's a neutral colour. It's almost like a brown, but it's not a brown. So very neutral, very deceiving, an amazing colour. Love umber, and I use umber a lot. And the colour I'm going to put with it, and you can put any colour because it's a neutral tone. Any colour will go with umber. So there's that, and I'm going to put with it blushing because it's just a nice in-between pink, and I wanted something quite light. So I have umber, blushing, and white acrylic paint. Baby wipes. I have pre-gessoed a page, a piece of card, sorry, and I have my heat tool for drying the paint. Because we're going to be layering, you need to dry each layer before you put another layer on, because if you don't, the 2 colours will mix together and it sort of defeats the purpose. And we need a stencil. So you could use a couple of stencils. I'm just going to use one for the purpose of today, and I'm using white orbs from Lavinia. And the reason is, I'll show you a sec. I'll take it out of the package. I have used it. I put it in there so that you could see it. Right. It's all the different sizes. So you have smaller ones up here, and you've got some bigger ones down here. And that's the reason I've chosen this one. I have done this using the Tim Holtz gradient stencils because of the same reason. They have the smaller parts and they have the bigger parts, so you have the choice. I just thought circles are always fun, and I put up a card on the Rubber Dance blog last night, and this is what I used, and this is the technique that I used for it. So I'm going to take you down to the table this way, and we'll start layering up some paint. So I'm going to start with, it doesn't matter what you start with. I'm going to put some umber, and I'll probably need a bit. So, and I'm going to put blushing down there as well. I always like to put the lids back on the paints when I'm using them. So I'm just going to pick up a bit on the brush and brush in a few spots. A bit like painting a house. And there's nothing perfect required. All I'm doing is getting some colour down. Just getting some colour down. And the reason that I've put gesso as an undercolour is it stops the paint soaking into the card, so the paint will go a lot further if you have gesso. If you don't put gesso down, of course you can still do this, but you'll use a whole lot more paint because it'll soak into the cardstock. Okay, we're just going to get the paint off, and I'm thinning it out. All I'm doing, and a jar of water for cleaning. And I did say that I was going to dry the paint as I go, so did I pull the plug out? I did too. Hang on, guys. Sorry about that. It takes a minute. You can see it. I've got the light on so I can see where the shiny bits are. Just want to make sure they're mostly dry. And that's looking pretty good. We'll leave it at that. Okay, so I think, oh, the other thing I've got is paper towels. It's always handy to have paper towels handy as well, just to dry off any umber that might be on the brush. Now I'm going to pick up, I'm not worried about water being on my brush because all it's doing is thinning out the paint, and that's okay to do that. So I'm going to put a bit of blushing in the spots where I haven't got anything at the moment, and I don't mind if I go over where the umber is. It looks quite pretty when you do, actually. So it's just adding a layer, and there's a whole heap of white on that side, so that's what I'm putting there. Okay, and back in the water. So this is what we've got so far, nothing fancy. And actually it's quite pretty just as it is. I could make a card out of just that. It's mostly dry. I forgot to get the white onto the craft sheet, so I'll put some white on there now, and I might go over a couple of places with white paint. So I'll just clean off the brush. Doesn't have to be perfect, but I do want to keep the white as white and just start putting that on like that. Now what you can do, and this is where the baby white and stencil come in. You need a baby white. Now you need to wring out the baby white. This is quite a bit of juice came out of that, so you'd be surprised. I don't want it saturated because when I wipe the paint off through the stencil, if it's too saturated, it'll pool underneath the stencil and then I end up with glug marks. So very lightly remove the paint through the circles, just like that. Don't overdo it, just keep it light. Ooh. I am going to clean that off and then wipe it with paper towel and dry it, and then I'll show you. Okay, so this is how it's coming along so far. How cool is that? So over here on the brown, I'm going to put some blushing. And then I can go in with the stencil. I might use small circles this time and gently wipe off, very gently, because I think this is still a little bit wet. And clean the stencil and wipe it down again. And dry. Okay, so you can see what's happening there. Now we can go in on the blushing areas. Just get the brush ready, and I'm going to put some umber, so I'm covering up these areas right there. Doesn't have to be exact. Try and keep it a little bit thin. Place your stencil, and again, just swiping as light as a feather. And it really is just light as a feather because it's quite wet. And again, I clean the stencil. And the reason I'm cleaning the stencil is because I'm mixing paints, going from one colour to another, to another, to another. That area I just did there. It's coming together well, isn't it? If I wanted to change stencils, I could. I'm not going to, but I could. I'm going to go in with umber again into this area. So I'll just pick up some umber and lightly scrape it. Doesn't matter if I go over other areas. Back in the water. Grab the stencil, and I might go for some smaller circles this time. And light as a feather. Remove some of the paint. And again, clean the stencil. Once you get into the rhythm of doing it, it's actually not too bad. I find this sort of thing quite relaxing. I don't know if you do. I do though. And look what we've got so far. Do you like that? Now, I'm going to show you what to do if you don't like it, because sometimes we just don't like how things have turned out. I do like that, but because this is a demo, I'm going to show you what to do. I want that really dry. Picking up some white paint. So I might want to redo this area over here. So I'm going to throw down some white paint. And I might want to redo up that area too. And over here. And just make it fancy with a bit of a flick of the brush. Like that. And dry. All I'm doing, it's like I'm putting gesso down as a base again. Feels dry, not too bad. And I'm going to go in with umber because there's a little bit left on there, and I'm going to put it over where the white is. You're probably thinking, what is she doing? Well, you know, it's just playing, really. Just playing with paint and stencils and layers. How to build up layers and how not to stress if the layers aren't right. I'm going to dry that layer. Yeah, that's pretty good. Nothing's coming off. And I think I need more of the blushing, so I'll just squirt a little bit more, not too much. Clean the umber off my brush. Use a paper towel just to be sure that's not too bad. And then I'm going to go over the umber with the blushing. Have I confused anyone yet? This is where I'm going to take the paint off though. We need a bit more of that colour. Maybe not. Okay, put the stencil over the top, grab the baby white and just lightly try and find the areas where you've put down the blushing. I think there's some white wet parts over here. Oh, very nice. And clean your stencil as you go, so it's ready for the next time. Don't be too fussy, it's just getting the excess off really. Right, so this is how it's looking so far. Look at all those layers. And you can keep layering until you're happy with it. Just keep on layering. Now the other thing I thought I might do is show you the reverse of all of that. So where we've taken paint off with the baby wipe, we're going to put some paint on, which is the reverse of taking paint off, isn't it? So I might put some, and I like to do finger painting for this part, just into a few circles, not too heavy, just lightly. And I might put some smaller ones down here. Like that. And maybe some small ones up here, just to have that diagonal feel to the whole page. Just a thin, you don't want to go in too thick with paint because you can always add to it. Bit hard to take it off when it goes all gluggy though. Okay. And there you have another layer of interest. If I wanted to, what I could do is clean that finger of the white paint, pick a couple of larger circles like that, and just add a circle here and there. And that just gives a nice highlight. I always like to go off the edge too. So let's take a couple off the edge. Oh, very nice. And just to even out that mark up there, we'll go in up there. See how interesting those ones are? And just as light as light as light. If you wanted to build those colours up a little bit more, of course you can, because I know which circle I've used. I haven't cleaned my stencil, so I can always go back over the top and add another layer of that pink if I so choose. Bring it back up now, guys. Did you like that? For something different? And that's just playing and creating layer on layer on layer. I could have kept going. I could have just put more white paint on, more umber, more of the blushing, taken it off with the baby wipe. The baby wipe is probably at a good stage now. I've been using it for how long? 10 minutes or so, and it's dry. It's a much better consistency with the water. You really do have to squeeze out. You need muscles and squeeze out as much. If you haven't got the strength, what you do is you hang it over something, a chair, whatever, and just leave it for 10 minutes and let it air dry a little bit to get the moisture out. Because when you go over your stencil, if this is too wet, it's going to catch around the edge of the stencil. And when you lift your stencil up, you're going to end up with blobs, a blobby circle that might not even look like a circle. So one way around that is to make sure that you wring out that baby wipe as much as you can. And if you can't, air dry it is a great alternative. There's always a way around things, always.